Let's do it.
All right. Hello, my name is Driver Larison. I want to welcome Mr. Ted Rubin. It's a pleasure to be interviewing him today. Mr. Rubin is a leading social marketing strategist, speaker, author, and sits on many advisory boards, including Dynamic Signals, Spaceback, and Photify. He's been listed the top 13 on Forbes' top 50 social media power influencers, and number 2 on the Lead Tales list of top 25 people most mentioned by digital marketers. So it's fair to say that you know your fair share of marketing knowledge, and you definitely have the requirements it takes to be an experienced person in the business industry. I just want to say thank you for taking up this interview. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully it all goes well.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it, Driver.
All right, so the first question I have for you is, it's been a year since we have had this global pandemic occurring. So the first question is, I'm just wondering on how the pandemic has changed the way we look at marketing and how it changed the way we really develop relationships with one another.
Well, those are two critically different questions, I think. So, truth be told, I don't think many companies have really changed the way they look at marketing. And I'm not going to say that's a good thing. It probably isn't a good thing. But then again, I've been saying that for years. So this is not necessarily a year that's different from others when it comes to the way I talk about marketing and what I think companies should be doing different. I focus on relationships, on engagement. I think we're in a different world right now. Now, I'm going to combine your two questions now, because what I believe has happened is that this was a year that really accelerated change in the way we communicate, build relationships, engage with each other, and operate our businesses. Marketing, unfortunately, I don't believe has quite kept up with it, because I don't know about you, but I see a lot of the same marketing out there. I see commercials without masks. I see that these companies not really being relevant to what's happening today. I will tell you that I was a big critic of the first 3 to 4 months of the pandemic, when card agencies were out there telling you to come in and buy a car. I mean, they were, and sure, they were saying, well, we're going to be careful, we're going to be safe, but they were basically, it was marketing that was encouraging people to leave their homes, to go against the scientific knowledge of wearing masks and not going out in public and not being in groups. And I think it took them a long time to adjust when it came to their marketing. I think companies adjusted very quickly to how they performed business on a day-to-day basis, to the way how they engage with their employees, to the way of how they communicated. What I don't think they adjusted real well was their marketing. And truth be told, I haven't seen it adjust much now. I think companies have wrapped their arms more around the fact that clearly we're not going to restaurants, so maybe they ought to tone down the restaurant marketing a little bit. Yep. But marketers tend to be very slow to adapt. And that's kind of pitiful in today's day and age. Like 20 years ago, 40 years ago, I'm 63 years old, so I've been around this space for a long time. You know, it was a lot harder. You bought ad space way in advance. You created, most of your marketing took weeks and sometimes months to create. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, it's created on a dime. I mean, each of us can create our own marketing in seconds. Therefore, there's almost no excuse to not be up to date with what should be happening. And I haven't seen enough of that. So I think that when people go back and look at the last year in retrospect, they're going to recognize and see more of the fact that they need to learn to adjust and evolve and adapt a lot quicker when it comes to how they market to people. Now, to the how we engage with each other and how we build relationships, I think people have learned a lot. And what I'm loving is that I have been pushing people to engage more, to read people's LinkedIn profiles, to know that you started college in 2018 and your LinkedIn profile still says that you're a freshman. Okay? Time to update it, because people might have neglected looking at that before, although to me that was a huge oversight. But now they have no other way to really get to know you, because they're not meeting you in person. They're not having quite the same conversations. They're not spending time with you over cocktails. It's a lot harder to stay on a Zoom for 2 hours than it is to hang out around a bar or at an event or in a socialized room for after events than it was before the pandemic. And I will tell you that, and by the way, for your audience and whoever whoever you're showing this to, I tend to ramble on and I go off on side shoots because my mind works like a Twitter feed. There's
Yep.
always stuff coming in and out of it. But I think that things are not going to go back as quickly as people expect them to. And there's a really important reason for that. And it's not due to the pandemic. It's due to the learning we've done during the pandemic of how so many of us can work remote effectively, about how much less travel is really necessary to get our jobs done, about how big, huge events with rented stages and convention halls that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, a lot of that work can be accomplished right here on our computers. So I think we're going to see a lot of companies not moving back into their offices. I think we're going to see a lot of companies letting office space go. And what's that going to be? It's going to be a hard time in the short term for the real estate owners, but it's going to also be an opportunity to people that say, how do we use that space more effectively? How do we do other things that can empower people and empower employees and empower our customers in a different way? Does Whole Foods need the same footprint that they had before, when I'm never going to go back to going into the store every day because I've learned that ordering at home is so easy? I was like a lot of other consumers, hesitant. Oh, I don't know. I like walking down the aisles. I've discovered that actually my discovery is even better online because Amazon and Whole Foods served me up choices, a lot of which I never even saw when I was in the store. So I think consumers' habits are going to change, and I think businesses' habits are going to change dramatically. Now, okay, so I get a lot of recruitment letters and a lot of things from recruiters who, whether they're looking for me or looking for me to recommend people. And I would say that before the pandemic, 90% of them said this person has to live X in this city or in one of 3 cities. Now I would say 80% of them say person can live anywhere they want. Again, there are certain jobs that's not possible, but there are going to be a lot more that are going to alter. So that's also going to change our marketing, because now remember, we're not just marketing to consumers, we're marketing to business people. Marketing covers B2B, marketing covers B2C, and marketing covers us as humans. I behave different as a human now. I used to travel every other week. I have no intention of going back to that.
Mhm.
I've also learned how nice it is to be home. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a little stir crazy right now. It's been a year.
Yeah.
But I also found out like how much more enjoyable things I can do when I'm home, how nice it is not to be coming home, unpacking my bag, and then thinking, what am I repacking in it 3 days from now? And I found that I can accomplish much of what I did from home. So I think a lot of companies are going to recognize that their pool of talent is a lot vaster than it was before, because they don't necessarily need someone in the same city. I think as marketers, we're going to recognize that local is very, very important, and how we reach out to people with localized content and with things that are relevant to their daily lives, and in a way that doesn't interfere as much, because we've now learned that we don't want to be interfered that way. We don't want to have to worry about those things. So I've gone on, and I know you have a lot more questions, so I'm going to take it
No, I
back a
need to,
notch and let you ask the next one.
every information is greatly appreciated. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the relationship aspects. I know you're really big on that. And in your book, Return on Relationships, you talk about relationships being a new currency, and
Yes.
how companies focus really on the ROI, which is return on investment, and how people should start focusing on not just building relationships, but making them stronger. So my question is for you, what's your like number one golden rule for building strong relationships in the business world?
Well, number one golden rule is do what I call look people in the eye digitally. That means go to their social profiles, find out what there's something about them. And by the way, that goes both ways. So my push to you would be Make your LinkedIn profile a little bit more prolific. Give me a little bit more information there. Again, being in the age group you're in, you don't do a lot on Facebook. So, when I go after people that are of an older age, I know I can get a lot of information about their families off of Facebook. My feeling is I believe all of us should open up those things as much as we can. Now, we all live different lives. We have different families. We have different jobs that we can say more or less in different ways. But the more information you put out there for people to find, the more they can learn about you and do their homework, so that when they're engaging with you, they know who you are. Now, I call it looking people in the eye digitally. I would assume even at your age, when at some point your dad, your mom, somebody sat you down and said, when you're going out with people or you're at meetings, make sure to look at people. Always make sure that they know that you're paying attention. I remember my first conversation about this was when I went on my first date. And you would think it was my dad, but it was my mom who said, you better look at her and not look at every other girl that walks in the room. Otherwise, you'll never get a second date. Well, that really holds to business, because I promise you that the most important people at the table when you're in meetings are watching what you're doing. So I'll tell you, that's like what I do in every meeting. I want to know who the people at the table are. And I watch who's paying attention and who's not, who's taking notes and who isn't, who's actually listening to me or not. And why is that important? It's important because if you're not listening to me, then I know when I'm trying to close you on a sale or convince you to work with somebody or come to work for you, I know that you probably haven't heard half of what I said. So I better repeat it a second time, or I better make sure it's clear what it is, are the most important features about me or my product or my service or my company, whatever it happens to be. So I think the most important part digitally now is that we do our research, that we pay attention, that we connect with people, that never send out a LinkedIn profile, a LinkedIn request without a personal note. Never accept one without writing a note back. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. It was so nice meeting you at the last event. I don't care if you didn't send me a note, I'm going to send you one back. And this is about building relationships over the long term, because I have an expression. A business is what a business, a brand is what a business or a person does. A reputation is what people remember and share. So you might have a certain job or be known as an accountant or be known as a marketer or be known as whatever else. But what you're really going to be known about is, can people count on you? Do you deliver what you say you're going to deliver? Do you underpromise and overdeliver? So these are the kind of things you can build by looking people in the eye digitally, by paying attention to what they're doing, by making sure to wish them a happy birthday on their birthdays, by making that birthday outreach something unique, not happy birthday like everybody else, not clicking a button or choosing one of the fairly obvious pre-written notes for you that are provided by the social platforms. Personalize it. Another thing is add people's names to their communication. So this is something that most people don't understand. Like in text, if you text me, the odds are, not every text because we've already communicated, but when you reach out for the first time, I'm going to reach back and mention your name in my text. In my emails, I'm almost always going to do that. It takes a little bit of extra work, but Dale Carnegie always said that the most beautiful word in any language to any human being is the sound of their own name. It makes you feel recognized. It makes you feel that somebody's paying attention to you. So these, to me, are very important things that we need to weave from our personal interactions. It's much more important digitally, because when we're face to face, it's easier for me to put my arm around you or go, dude, great to see you. Or, oh my God, Lori, it's so nice to see you again. I love the necklace you're wearing. We don't do that enough digitally. We tend to do it much more when we're face to face, although a lot of people are guilty of not doing it there either. So what do I make a habit of? I make a habit of calling people by name. I keep notes in all my contact files. So in my contact file for you, it will say how I met you, that your dad introduced us. It'll say what our first communication was like. I'll probably take the first email that you sent me of any substance and cut and paste it into the notes in my contact files. That way, the next time we engage, all I have to do is quickly look at your contact file and I remember something about you. And then two things happens. Either someone notices me looking at my file and they're impressed and they go, wow, you have that in your phone? Yeah, of course I do. Or they don't notice it and they're even more impressed. They're like, oh my God, you remember me, or you remember how we met, or I mean, I do this. I got to tell you, I just communicated with somebody and they made a comment like, yeah, Ted, we met like a few years ago. I go, well, it was actually 2008 at Isabel Walcott's dinner party. And they were like, oh my God. Now, I didn't really remember that. I knew that I had something in my notes about that person,
Mhm.
and I went and checked. And again, don't be worried that someone's going to see you doing that, because they'll be just as impressed that you took the time to save that information. Now, this doesn't all prove out in moments. Many people stop doing these things. So they go, oh, I remembered his name. He didn't even care. This happens over time. It happens over weeks, over months, over years, where you build your reputation, where people know who you are, where people will protect you or your brand digitally. I mean, how many times do you see a brand get attacked online, and then you see some of their advocates or the people that love the brand coming out and going, oh, that's not really fair. Their product is always good. They must have just messed up this one time, or as an individual, so like I'm known for telling it like it is. My blog is called Straight Talk. And I tend to speak my mind. I speak my mind politically. I speak my mind in just about every way. And I try to do it professionally and with respect. I try not to be, outright mean or anything like that. But every once in a while, I'm misunderstood, like all of us are. I mean, especially in digital format, in a tweet or an Instagram post, you might write something that isn't quite accepted the way you put it out. And I will tell you right now that 9 out of 10 times, if somebody comes after me, before I even have a chance to respond, somebody comes back and goes, oh, you misunderstood Ted. I'm sure that's not the way he meant it. Or, or Ted says what he means, but he's very professional. And these are things that will happen for you as an individual, as an executive, or for your brand. And they'll happen through you for your brand as you're representing your brand.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be using some of these tips in the future for sure. I mean, the whole taking notes on everybody, it seems like a lot of work, but I mean, it pays off in the long term for sure.
It does. And I'll just tell you that a lot of people are going to say, oh, nobody does that. It's not important. But by the way, the less people that do it, the better it is when you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't ever have someone say, oh, nobody does it that way anymore. Well, that's okay, because I'm going to stand out as somebody that does do it. So I send personal written notes very often. I was taught years ago by a mentor, every time you go on an interview, especially now, because everything's digital, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you go on an interview or you do a Zoom interview. What you should be prepared is you should have at least 3 handwritten notes ready, already addressed. And whoever you meet on that interview, I'm talking about like a job interview. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you end up meeting 3 people. As soon as the meeting's over, you write a note and you put 3 things in every note that you write. You write something that they talked about, something you talked about, and then something that's an observation of yours about the company. Quick 3-liner. It was really great meeting you. Really enjoyed it. By the way, this works best if you're in an in-person interview. You drop it. You sit down in the lobby. You write the note. You drop it in the mailbox. They have it on their desk the next morning. So every other interviewee is sending them digital communications that they're ignoring because nobody reads their freaking email anymore. And you send them a note. And why does that stand out? Because they don't get mail. Oh my God, I got mail. It's here today. He must have written it right after he walked out of the office.
There you go. So I just wanted to talk next about, you talk about your reputation and how relationships are very, very important, and that you can take certain steps to get that way to have a strong relationship with someone else. But when it comes to being an employee or a future employee like me, what steps or what should I do in order to build credibility in the office when it comes, it can build a relationship with my boss and my other employees, but when I'm trying to, take that next step and, really show who I am or show why I deserve to be in the position, do you think there's a certain way to go about that or certain steps I should take?
Well, there are some basic steps. I mean, obviously, every situation is different. You have to read who you're dealing with and who the people are that you're trying to build these relationships with, or you're trying to impress, or whatever it is you're trying to do. But in general, and I mentioned this earlier, one of the things I've lived by that my dad taught me was under promise and over deliver. And I'll tell you right now that most people go the opposite. because they're so anxious to either get the job, get the assignment, be thought of as a guy that comes up with big numbers, that they promise things that they can't possibly deliver on. I, especially when I was in sales, and basically we're all salesmen. I mean, we're all selling at one time or another. We're selling ourselves, or even in marketing, you're selling, and you might not be selling direct to the consumer, but you're trying to convince them to do something. And you're selling your boss. You're trying to get the next assignment. You're trying to get the next raise or the next promotion. So, what you want to do is be careful about what you promise. Think through what you're doing. Don't just come up with crazy numbers. Do the math in your head. Make sure you know what you're doing. And then even if you do overpromise, well, then you're going to have to work double hard to over deliver, because the worst thing you can do is not make good on something you committed to doing. So I think that's one of the things. Another really important thing is, and it's hard to learn that from me right now, but my job right now is talking, is listening. Listening is a lost art. Think about your friends. Think about all the people you hang out with. Most people, not only are they not listening, they're spending 90% of the time you're talking, trying to decide what they're going to say in reply. So you need to train yourself to focus on listening, and don't worry about having to give an immediate answer. Most people will understand or appreciate if you say, "Oh, I'm not really sure how to respond to that. Give me a moment. Let me process everything you just said." First of all, people are desperate to be listened to, and they're not being listened to in general. I would say for the most part, even in most meetings, look around the room. First time, I don't know if you'll have an internship this summer or if you had one already. Again, it's harder in a Zoom format to know what the people are doing. But again, watch what other people are doing. Pay attention. Let the person speak. Know that you're interested. Repeat back something they said. Take valuable notes that you can then say, okay, so let me get this straight. You said that we need to deliver this by Thursday. You want it to be X size. I mean, you need to repeat this stuff back to people. Just like what I always try to do when I meet people. And I'm bad this way also. My mind's flying all the time. So you give me your name and I miss it. So I've trained myself over many, many years to focus on you when you tell me your name, and to relate it to something in my head. We each have our own way of remembering things. So I'm not going to tell you how to remember something, but repeat somebody's name back to them when you've just met them. "George, it was great to meet you." I mean, I sit out by my dock every morning and do work. I'm lucky. I live in South Florida, a nice place, and people walk by. And this couple that came by the other day came by, and I knew they might come by today. So instead of having to look at my phone then, and by the way, when I met them, I wrote a note. I have a neighbors list in my phone under contacts, and I have names of people that I've met during the pandemic that walk by, and I make little notes so I remember who they are: the jogger, the walker, something I name them. And they come walking by and they're like, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" I go, "Richard and Ann, right?" And people perk up immediately. So I think that's really important. And I think that it's really important in a business place, especially when you meet new people. But I think the most important tool you can have is letting people know that you're paying attention, looking at them. And like I said, under promise, over deliver, look them in the eye, offer to do things that need to get done. I mean, a lot of this is not rocket science, especially when you're young and you're the new person in the office. And then, of course, be respectful of everybody and listen to them. So I'm going to tell you right now, don't call me Mr. Rubin anymore. Call me Ted. Now, I tell that to some people who have a hard time with it, maybe because they've been brought up in a household where they've always been taught to talk to an adult with a sir or a mister or something. But think about it. Remember what people say. So here's a lesson I learned from my daughters. Okay, as a dad, I'm a divorced dad. So I didn't have my daughters around all the time, and I couldn't enforce, let's say, some dads will go, "This is my rule and you live in my house." When you're a divorced dad, it's a lot harder to enforce those kind of rules. So I would say most parents, and I'm sure you're probably guilty of this to your parents. Your dad calls you, you ignore the phone call, and you text him back and say, "What?" Exclamation point. That's your way of telling your dad, "Don't freaking call me. Text me. I don't want to pick up the phone. That's not what we do. I'm not happy to do it." Now, this is a lesson for business. Learn how people want to be communicated with. You're going to have some colleagues that want to be emailed to. I like email. Anytime you want something that you want me to do that I can't do immediately, you better email it to me. Because if you text it to me and I can't do it right now, I'm going to forget. And don't tweet me. Don't send me a direct message. Don't send it to me on Instagram or on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And but here's the other side of it. I train people how to properly communicate with me. A lot of them don't listen. I say, if you want me to do something, email me. If you need me quickly, text me. And they continue trying to reach out to me via social media. And why? For me, that's not a good way to follow up, but pay attention to who you're talking to. If your boss tells you he likes text, then that's the way you communicate with him. If your colleague prefers email, it might have to be different for all of them. Communicate with people the way they want to be communicated with. So here's the double side of it. When you're trying to get me to do something for you, then you need to communicate the way I prefer to communicate. When I'm trying, if it's the other way around, then it's me trying to get you to do something for me, then it's my job to communicate the way you prefer to be communicated. And then the last addendum to that is let people know. Don't like, I'm sure you've been around friends or something, and they go, dude, you know I don't like that. And I go, how would I know? You never told me you don't like that. Well, can't you tell? No, it's not that. Be upfront. Tell people what you prefer. Tell people what's the best way to communicate. In a business environment, everyone will appreciate when they know that you're paying attention to what they prefer. And then if they're trying to get you to do something, again, if it's your boss, it's the other way around, but a colleague, and you go, listen, John, I'm not going to see that if you, or Slack, Slack is the best. That's the best way to get me. I was just working with a company for a long time that Slack was being used, but I freaking hate Slack. It's just another damn place for me to go. So I would say to them, when I need you, I'll go to Slack because that's where you are. But when you need me, you better text me.
Awesome. I've definitely been learning about a lot of listening skills in my communication class, but this is just an extra, more information that I'll definitely use, and I really appreciate it. Just to kind of switching topics a little bit, I was reading on your Straight Talk website about how you have your slogan, "No Let Up," and how it's been a guiding force for you. And especially since you mentioned how you're a divorced dad, how that has really been played a part in your um, how guided you to the position you are today. So I was wondering how did that really come about? Like how did really your "No Let Up" kind of slogan come to the forefront?
Well, it's something that it wasn't something I came up with and then decided to live by it. It's just kind of been the way my whole life has been. It was something I was taught by my dad that, my dad grew up during the Depression era. His father died young. He was the oldest in the family. I have to tell you that I didn't learn this until after he passed away, but my dad used to talk about working up in the Catskills when he was 16. I assumed it was a summer job, just like you would probably assume, because
Yep.
that's our world. Like at 16, I worked at summer jobs. No, my dad graduated 2 years early because his family needed money. And at 16, he was working in a full-time job to send money home. So it was something that he just taught me from the beginning. And then, look, you're young, all your friends are like that. We all think that we're going to plan our lives and it's going to turn out the way we expect.
Mhm.
But there's not one person in my life I know, not one, whose life has turned out the way they planned or they expected. I mean, there are ones that are more on their path than that they originally made than others, but we all run into challenges and changes and evolutions and things that make us evolve and change. And so for me, No Let Up is that's what it's about. I had to fight to keep my daughters in my life. I have another hashtag I use, "This Dad Won't Quit." Their mom has made it very difficult for me, but they're my daughters. I love them. I will always be there for them. And the way No Let Up, the term came about is, and you might have read the article, is a friend of mine named Tony Luisi, who worked for me at 800 Flowers back in the 90s, came to me one day about probably, let's see, about 12 years ago. And he said, "Hey man, I've been working on this thing and you're going to love it because it's so you." And, he worked for me, and I didn't use that term, but I always used to say, we got to keep pushing forward and it doesn't matter what happens and things are going to change. And we were working together at a company that went public that everyone thought the stock would skyrocket and it fell apart and it caused challenges. And he said, I'm doing this thing helping charities raise money. And I started something called NoLetUp. He goes, and I just thought you'd really relate to it. And I said, oh my God. Like, and this is fabulous. A lot of times I adopt other people's things. It doesn't have to be my idea. And I said, listen, dude, I want to use this. He goes, yeah, that's why I told it to you. I thought you would. I said, well, I'm going to turn it into a hashtag and kind of use it as a lifestyle thing. He goes, well, go ahead. I use it in a whole different respect. And the only thing I'm asking you not to do is don't make logo wear and sell it, because that's what I have a trademark out for. I said, no problem. And to this day, people keep asking me to make stuff and sell stuff, and I tell them I can't do it. But to me, NoLetUp just encapsulated everything about life. There's no let up in life. I mean, there's no let up in our own personal lives. Then we have friends and family, and there's always somebody somewhere around us who has challenges or even good things. Good things happen. 5 friends have kids that get married. You got to be on a plane every month flying somewhere else for a wedding. That's no let up. No let up in finding time for yourself and finding that moment on the beach or that exercise or that workout or whatever it has to do. So to me, I adopted it when I was about 50, 51, 52. And it was such a part of who I already was that it just helped me in one short one-liner, no let up. And I often put an exclamation point and a fist after it, in that there's no let up in life, and that we've just got so much that we have to do that. And again, remember, no let up doesn't mean that work always goes on. It means it's just no let up in far as all the different opportunities we have, things we have to do, things we have to do for ourselves, for others. And I tend to grab things like this, return on relationship, I call R on R. And I try to explain to people it's not return on relationship versus return on investment. It's return on relationship will enhance your return on investment. This dad won't quit is how I feel about my daughters, but my daughters are now 24 and 26, and they don't take so kindly to someone hovering over them, not quitting. So I'm kind of evolving it into a new hashtag I've been using, which is the dad who will always love. And that whole concept is that no matter what you do, where you go, whether you talk to me or you don't, I'll always be there for you and I always love you. So I hope that answers that question.
It completely. I definitely agree how people having different experiences in life, definitely the slogan "No Let Up" can definitely help people, guide themselves to having success. And I mean, it's every day is always a different experience. So it's a great
Right.
way to live by.
And success has many different definitions. That's a really important point to make. Now, everybody's definition is different about what success means. And what I also find is, at least in my life, I certainly am, most of us tend to be our own worst critics.
Mm, agreed, definitely. So I just wanted to focus a little bit more on digital marketing and the marketing industry. So I have a few questions on that. So the first one I have is, at Marquette, we always talk about the whole main philosophy of Marquette's education is building well-rounded students. So we have a lot of courses we have to take that aren't really necessarily business courses, but are supposed to prepare us for the professional world. So do you think there's any specific, not really courses, but like a field that might be beneficial when trying to understand marketing?
You mean field of study? Well, certainly psychology is incredibly valuable. How
Mhm.
does the mind work? How do people think? How do you push and prod and influence them? Obviously, the word influence has gotten very big in marketing in the last bunch of years. So I think psychology is really important. Look, I'm a big believer. I went to Cornell, and I took a lot of stuff that had nothing to do with broad education, learning history, learning. I mean, I had to take math courses, I had to take biology. I think what I strive to do now is I want to be as knowledgeable as I can. Now, I will admit that a lot of that came to me later in life, because when you're younger, you're very focused on achieving and earning money, and that stuff's not important, and et cetera, et cetera. But during the pandemic, I've taken a lot of advantage of this time to get very into audio books. I exercise a lot, so now I'm rarely exercising without an audio book playing in my ears instead of music. Um, and I think history is really important. Now, obviously, there's marketing history, which is a little bit more relevant to marketing, but history, it's basically about knowing people. Your marketing, you need to understand people. You need to understand people that are different from you, because one of the biggest mistakes made by marketers is that we market to ourselves. I mean, I promise you, you'll hear this going forward. Oh, I would never buy that, or I would never do that. And if I was in one more meeting before the pandemic with a room full of late 30s and early 40s men telling me what they wouldn't buy, and it was something I was trying to sell to teenage girls, I was going to vomit. Like, I'm like, why don't we have any teenage girls in this room? Why don't we have any women in this room? Why don't we have any of who our customers are? My business partner, John Andrews, and I have made a career out of speaking to the people who are actually trying to market to. So I think that as far as other fields of study, learning sociology, psychology, watching people, spend time, go to stores. I mean, again, and as you grow up, you'll have business partners. I mean, look at your dad and his partners. They all have different skills because they're better at different things. My business partner is a retail geek. He loves to go into stores. He just watches people, wants to see what they're buying, what they're doing, how they're checking out, how many people are walking out the door without checking out because it was too hard, or who can't find something because the store associate says, oh, it's over there on aisle 16, instead of walking them over the way they do at Whole Foods or other retailers where they're much more adapted to what people need in order to make a purchase. So I think it's the same thing for your marketing. I think you need to learn about people. You need to watch those kind of things. I think those kind of courses are invaluable. I also would absolutely take a public speaking course. I kind of took one as a default in college. It was like an accident. Like I was running out of things. I had to get some credits, and there were certain things I had to fulfill, and I took it. And I remember going into it thinking it was a joke, but to this day, I still do some of the things I learned, in that class. Plus, if nothing else, it helps you take away that fear of talking in front of an audience.
It's I've already had to take a little business presentation speaking course already, and it's definitely helped with I did have a big fear of like speaking in front of people and all that, but they kind of taught me how to, speak for myself and not really try to please everybody.
Right.
So that definitely helps. And
One other, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
well, I was just saying how you're talking about business being a people business, and that's definitely been drilled into our heads at Marquette about how it's always the person first. You can't really see them as numbers anymore. It's all about how they look, how they feel, how they kind of relate to different products and services.
Also, remember, everybody influences somebody. So, people talk about influencers, but the real important influencer in almost any business is your customer, because
Mhm.
they're the ones who are going to get you other customers. For the most part, they're going to be your best advocates. So you have to learn how to listen to them. But here's something I'm going to tell you, in that when you're speaking to an audience, and that audience can be 3 people, 1 person, 1,000 people, watch them, look for cues, see if you're getting through to them. See, are they laughing at your jokes? Are they nodding their head yes when they should be, and no when I say when they should be, when you want them to be? Are
Mhm.
they going like this when you want them to? Because if not, learn to adjust what you're saying on the fly. Don't get locked into what you pre-prepared. Now, it's very hard to learn this without being on a lot of stages or being in front of a lot of people, but do it in places where you have nothing to lose. Do it with your friends. Do it at parties. Watch how people react to what you're saying, and you'll learn to pick up those cues and then adjust your message.
Awesome. Awesome. Just the next question I have is kind of focusing again on marketing, but we see how the world can change instantly like that, like how we saw a year ago. Do you see any current trends right now having a significant impact within the next 2 to 5 years when it comes to marketing?
I think we have to learn how to do what we're doing right here. I don't think Zoom is going away. I don't think Google Meet is going away. I think these services are going to get better at servicing groups. I mean, look at the new app Clubhouse. Now, I'm not a huge fan
Mhm.
because I find it to be a time pit, and it's very difficult to wade through and find the value. And even when you find the value, very often there's so many involved in a conversation that the value is this much and you have to spend this much time, but let's not look at it as whether we like it or not. Let's look at it as what it's offering to people and where it's going to be going. More people are going to be able to communicate using tools like that from a distance. So then you have to start developing those skills. I mean, that's going to be really important. And big businesses have to understand that a lot of people are going to insist on working from home in the future. Sure, there are going to be people that aren't going to have a choice. You need a job, you go where the job is. But more and more people, especially the ones that they're sought after, you're going to be a Marquette graduate. You're probably going to have a lot of great skills. People are going to want to hire you, hopefully.
Yes.
Or it might take a few years after you're going to accomplish something great. You're going to do something. Then they're going to have to work around you. So I think businesses, especially marketers, are going to have to learn to use these tools, to use Zoom, to use Meetup, not just to use it as a default because they had no choice, but to understand how to use it for something else. So I just think that that's going to be a really important thing over the next 2 to 5 years. These communication tools are going to expand to the point that a lot of flying, a lot of meeting is going to change, and they're going to be done like this. So we're going to have to learn to fine tune our relationship building skills, to looking people in the eye digitally, to knowing that we're going to have to see them like this, and we're not going to get to hug them or pat them on the back or clink glasses. We're going to have to learn to develop those relationships and build that connection from a distance.
It'll be definitely interesting to see how everything plays out, but I do agree it's going to go more into that direction.
I'm
And
kind of happy because I'm 63 and getting tired. So it's going to be have to run around so much.
it definitely is nice just to sit on a computer all day, but it's a little bit of a learning curve, of course, at
Yeah,
this.
but again, I don't want to misunderstand. I don't believe these other things are going to go away. I just think we're going to be using these tools on a regular basis. And the way a lot of people looked at it was originally that this is something as a stopgap. It's not going to be a stopgap. These are going to all be integrated and be refined as we move forward.
Gotcha. Definitely being more expanded into different areas for sure.
Right.
And that kind of leads me to my last question I have for you.
Okay.
There's an age-old question is which is more important, having influence and strong relationships compared to a high-level education. So I just wanted to know what your opinion is on that, because I know everyone has different experiences, but for you being a Cornell grad and many different other high-level institutes, I just want to know, and your background of building relationships, which one do you feel has given you the most in your professional career?
I think it's all combined. I don't think you can weigh one. Look, I think education is incredibly important. The good news is that education is at our fingertips now. I believe a lot in the university system because I think a lot of growth happens in those 4 years or 2 years. I think attending school is important. Not necessarily, I mean, sure, you can learn the same stuff right in your living room now without even attending a university. I mean, it's all available. But I think that we mature and we grow a lot, and we learn a lot of communication, engagement skills. We learn how to be around people. Also, those years from 18 to 22 are years that our brains are developing as human beings. So I think schooling is very important because of the social factor. So, and by the way, I think that even holds if a lot of it is digital, because we're still in a classroom. We still have to raise our hand. We still have to get to know other people. We still have to form study groups. I think those skills lend themselves to success in the business world and in life. So I think that's very important. Now, I'm not saying every single person should go to school. Certainly there are ones that shouldn't. What bothers me is the people like Gary Vaynerchuk telling everybody that school is bullshit and you don't need it and just go out and work and you'll get so much more experience that way. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think most 18-year-olds are not ready to do that. There are certain ones that are, just like there are 18-year-olds ready to go to the NBA, but most of them aren't. So, I think that you have to keep that in mind. So I think schooling is really important, but I think that using schooling to learn the relationship skills is where the real win comes in.
Gotcha. I mean, it's based off of everybody's experience, but it's definitely a
100%. And again, there's no one size fits all. We all have to figure out what works for us. And look, I think education is an ongoing thing. And I would tell you that I've always read, I've always learned. I think that if I look back on one of the things I didn't do enough, it was on reading and learning while I was doing things like I am now. Now, part of that is I also have more time. I've reached a point in my career where I kind of do things when I want to do them. I am working and I work hard, but I make my own hours. I can get my job done at 2 o'clock in the morning if I want to, and I can be out doing something else in the middle of the day. Not
Mhm.
everybody has that opportunity, but I think we all have time around this where we can better ourselves. And I think that's really important. And by the way, I don't mean just about marketing. I'm learning about the world. I'm learning about, I mean, one of the things I've spent a lot of time on the last year is understanding politics better, understanding the world, white supremacy, racism. I want to understand these things better so I can better myself and help others.
Definitely agreed. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I just want to thank you, Ted, for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with me. It's greatly appreciated. I definitely learned a lot. I'm going to take a lot of these skills with me into the future when it comes to building relationships, and hopefully I get to use them soon. But we'll see. But just again, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And listen, we now have established a relationship. We've gone beyond the handshake level. We've spent almost an hour together. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. If you need advice, if you want to talk, obviously, if you need to spend 30 minutes together, I need you to, reach out and we set a time. But if you just have a question, just text me, call me. I'll always do my best for anybody to make myself available.
Awesome. Awesome to hear. I'm actually going to end the recording real quick.